moving on, guys. This is the first week of OU football, the Brent Venables era. We keep saying it all the time, but it's officially started. Spring practice, first
That's
spring
so
practice
exciting.
happened on what was that,
Boomer.
Monday? Yeah, Boomer. That's the he's so
Boomer.
goofy. He's so goofy.
I love this guy.
The first practice went down. Not a whole lot happening from practice necessarily. We saw Dylan Gabriel throw a little. His new helmet's kind of cool. We saw the new guys in uniform. That was pretty neat. What I thought was interesting was Brent Venables' press conference before it all went down. He said a lot of interesting things. Typical Brent Venables press conference. He started with a 22-minute opening statement.
The best, man.
It's just hysterical.
He's just like, I want to say a couple things.
Yeah.
And then just 20 minutes.
I wonder
stream
if
of consciousness doesn't stop.
I wonder if he gets the joke. If he understands that that he talks a lot.
Surely people have talked to him and be like, hey man, we should bring in a communications person for your speeches, conciseness and stuff like that. And he's probably like, no, I don't need that.
It was an hour-long press conference. It was an hour-long press conference. They got 5 questions in. It was crazy. It was nuts.
So good.
But one of the questions that I want to talk about, because we had a good discussion in our group text earlier this week about it, was that Brent Venables made the comment about commitments and recruits committing to the University of Oklahoma. And a reporter asked him, Bob Prisbillo from Soonerscoop.com, I want to give him credit. He asked him if he would allow other recruits, the recruits that commit to the University of Oklahoma, to go visit other places. And in short, that answer was no, because of what Brent Venables in his definition of commitment means, which when you hear him explain it, we won't go all the way into it. If you want to hear it, go listen to his press conference. He dives into it, ask the reporter about how he asked his wife to marry him and stuff. It's good stuff. But
it's very funny. I
Yeah,
love
it's
how
very
he,
funny.
It's very funny.
approaches it.
I feel like I wrote that for
Yeah.
him. I don't know.
yeah, I know. When you hear it, it makes sense. But Mark brought up a good point earlier in the week about how it's not how things are done now. Go ahead, Mark.
So that's my whole thing, is just, sure, this model has worked at Clemson, right? Where Dabo has instituted a rule of, if you commit to the Clemson Tigers, you're a Clemson Tiger. So you're not going to go visit all these other schools. You're not going to do that. If you're committed, you're committed. And that's one of those things that sounds so good. That sounds awesome if you can implement it successfully, right? My thing is, I'm not sure that's going to work at every school. I'm not sure that's going to work at every program. And there's a reason that schools like Alabama don't do that. There's a reason that Georgia hasn't done that. You lose out on guys when you do that. And maybe that's the proposition that Coach Venables is willing to make when he institutes a policy like that, right? If it's guys that won't commit to us because they want to keep hopping around, then we don't want them. That's an honorable position, nothing less than I would expect from Brent Venables. But I do think that you put an artificial restriction on these kids that not all of them are going to resonate with.
And I completely agree with where you're coming from. But when he said it, he made a point to say, do not commit to OU until you are ready to do so. So he's not begging these guys to commit and stay committed. He's telling them, do not commit until you are 100% ready to be here and nowhere else. Go do all your recruiting, take all your visits, do all that stuff, but do not commit until you are done with all of that, until you think you're done with that. And I think that's the part that I can get on board with. That's the part that I can be okay with go ahead, Ron.
I mean, no, I agree with you, Mason, when you put it into that context, because I think we see all the time, every other freaking day, especially during the fall, there's a high school kid with the tweet that says sorry, after talking to my family, I've decommitted from XYZ, want to thank XYZ, like, and I'm opening up my recruitment, right? And we see that all the time. And I think rather than just like committing super early and some people leaving, make this something that actually matters and make it a commitment that you're going to hold yourself to. Because BV's entire thing since he's been hired is like, I need to make these people like great football players, but also great men off the field. And I think having and knowing like that, when you make a commitment, keep the commitment. I think that's going to help those kids after college and in their lives and things like that. And I think that's why he's trying to do it.
Pat.
It's tough. I agree with both sides, but at this end of the day, it's not loyalty is not the world we live in anymore. Like people are switching jobs after 6 months, and they're doing that because a new company is like, oh, this person's a talent, I'm going to hire them. I don't care if they've been around here for 6 months or not. So loyalty is just kind of dying. 5 years ago, this would have been an amazing speech and idea. Now we might lose a couple of good players potentially.
Matt.
Yeah, I see both sides, but I agree with Patrick. That's all I got.
Okay. I mean, this is just amazing.
There's something going on.
There's got to be something going on.
We got to get to the bottom
Patrick.
of this. Look at Patrick. Look at Pat.
There's something happening.
He can't handle himself over
Matt,
this.
I love you, brother. I can't wait to circle the wagons. Speaking of circle the wagons, that's what we're gonna do right now, baby.
Hey, before
Mark,
can we talk spring ball a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Some of the roster came out, like the spring roster came out, and my guy Jaron Kanak is 6'2", 229 as a true freshman.
That's
my
massive
God, man.
18-year-old.
And he's gonna get bigger. He's just gonna get thicker, and like, man, I am super excited to see him hit the field. And he's not the only one. We can go through the list of guys who look like monsters just looking at that roster. We got some freaks in the building, man. I'm excited we're going to be watching the spring game. We won't be at the spring game, but I'm excited to see those guys in action.
Yeah.
Andy liked your tweet.
Andy liked my tweet, which is cool.
Jaron Kanak, come on the pod and discuss your great body. Let's do it.
Jared liked a tweet about Mark calling him a quarterback. That's amazing.
Wildcat quarterback, Jaron Kanak.
Spot.
And the best thing is I didn't tag him. I didn't know that people search themselves out the way that I guess people do.
I mean, he like just turned 18. Of course, he's like, okay, got to check who's saying things about me. Am I famous?
Yeah, dude.
I'm in his corner forever and ever and ever. Dude's a badass. Let's get him on the field. Get the ball in his hands.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what this wide receiver position group is going to look like, just because of losing Hazelwood, Weiss coming back fully healthy, Marvin Mims, those guys, Drake Stoops, just seeing what they look like in this new Levy system, especially with Gabriel throwing on the ball. I'm excited to see what that'll look like. Patrick, don't raise your eyebrows. I saw that.
We're not going to talk about it. Fine.
Patrick,
you guys know I'm a big Dylan Gabriel guy.
There was a single video in which Dylan Gabriel threw a pass that was wobbly, and Patrick took it as he doesn't know how to throw a spiral. And it's the most Patrick thing I've ever seen in my life.
It shook Patrick's faith in his Heisman pick.
I know.
He was like, oh, man. Is he going to start over the freshman?
It's amazing. It's amazing.
I'm also excited to see the receivers. I think it's going to be a lot of the receivers and the tight ends. The two new tight ends, in addition to Braden Willis, we've got a lot of options, and I think it's going to be good to feature Marvin Mims more, which I think that they're going to do, because if you go back to Ole Miss with AJ Brown and DK Metcalf, they were using those guys. They were featuring those guys. You know, they were playing to their receiver strength versus Lincoln, who just kind of let the offense spread around. And there's something to that, but this is going to be better.
Did you guys this is not related to spring ball, but did you guys see Ted Roof's comment about Grinch's defense?
No, I would
No.
love to.
I mean, he was like basically like no comment is what he said, but he was like, well, I don't really have anything to say about like Grinch's defense.
What was
like,
the question?
They won a lot of games. I guess he was asked about like comparing like Grinch's defense to his or like the new defensive scheme that BV is thinking up. I think I saw it on Twitter today. And he was basically just like he was like not answering the question, but everyone knows that our defense was never that good. So
Yeah.
it was kind of like beneath the lines. He was trying to like tiptoe around to not be like rude or anything, but things are definitely changing defensive wise.
I don't know if you guys saw that quote from Cale Gundy. If we talked about it last week, but Cale Gundy basically said that learning Levy's offense is like learning Portuguese. So it looks like it's going to be really intricate. And then I looked up how long it takes to learn Portuguese, and it was like 26 weeks. And we've got like 27 weeks till game time. So we'll be sitting pretty, boys.
Not a coincidence. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
a
not.
coincidence. I like it. Anybody else? Anything to add before we circle the wagons?
That's also interesting. Just what Patrick said, because
Not Portuguese.
I know,
Yeah.
no,
Oh.
just the Gundy quote, because I know that offense is actually a little bit more run heavy than you might think. And it's interesting to think that there could be that many intricacies built into such a run heavy offense. I haven't watched nearly enough of Ole Miss the last year or two to, dive in on it, but that's going to be fun to see.
Yeah,
It also aligns with what Spencer Rattler said, because he said, I've learned more in this preseason about offensive schemes than I did my entire college career. So
Yeah,
You're right.
I mean, the whole thing with Lincoln is he makes it easy for his quarterbacks. That's how it works is, hey, this is how you read this, check this, throw it here. And that's where the success comes from.
Yeah. There's a really good interview done by the Oklahoma Breakdown with Shane Beamer, and Shane Beamer tries to give clarification about that Spencer Rattler quote and about the kind of offense that South Carolina runs compared to the offense that he ran while he was at Oklahoma. And it was kind of Shane trying to cover Lincoln Riley's back, but you could also tell like, okay, yeah, Spencer has a lot more freedom and ability to do his own thing in this new South Carolina offense, which allows him to learn more. So I thought it was interesting.
I think I speak for all of us when I say this is a pro Spencer Rattler podcast, right?
I'm
especially knowing what we know now about last year's Lincoln situation.
Sure. Yeah.
Nothing about what went down was his fault. I mean, like, okay, some might have been.
Yeah.
But like pro Spencer Rattler, hope he does great for Shane Beamer in South Carolina.
I still think putting in Caleb was the right move. Like I'm still pro Caleb in that regard. But I'm like very pro Spencer. I think, he handled it really well. And then like everyone knew he was leaving, and then he left and, said some things now, but I wish him the absolute best.
Agreed.